Summoning Hour.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the fourth and final episode of the podcast I gathered while I was out on my trip to the College Esports Expo out in Boston. And in proper form, I should really introduce our musical guests once again, Delta 4. You can find them on Bandcamp at deltaiv.bandcamp.com/releases. And the song is These Cold Corridors. I've had great guests all along with students and Kevin Mitchell, the organizer of everything, and I can't tell you how appreciative I am of being able to have these podcasts to send out in this time when everyone's unsure, and I hope my podcast can give a little normalcy to things. And honestly, it's helped me stay sane with my own sense of normalcy, being able to produce this content and keep my mind on something like esports and collegiate esports, where there's so many problems that could be solved, or teams and players and organizations that need just a little bit of attention to push themselves to that next level. And so I'm super stoked to provide this last episode and then get moving on some new episodes. In the meantime, enjoy a podcast, share it with your friends, have some discussions, have a little podcast book club-esque thing going on, maybe some after-work happy hour talking about your favorite podcasts or local esports events going on, or maybe you can reach out to your college nearby and see what esports they have going on, because a lot of these clubs, they haven't stopped. With that, here's the episode with Olin Hayes, former student at Emerson, as well as sportscaster and esportscaster and competitive Smash player. You can track him down online at olinhayesports.com. Olin, O-L-I-N, Hayes, H-A-Y-E-S, sports, S-P-O-R-T-S.com. All right, I'm entering hour number 4 of podcasting with the CEX and Emerson's crew, and now I actually have to worry about looking up at a camera, which is different for me.
You don't have to. You can just look at him.
I could look at my guest Olin, part of the CEX crew, and formerly, since you graduated, part of the Smash Club or just casual gaming club on campus.
Yeah. So basically, when I got to Emerson, soon after I started playing Smash Bros. Competitively, and there wasn't much of anything on campus for that. There was an esports club, but there wasn't anything related to Smash Bros. Or really any fighting games yet. Mm-hmm. So my sophomore year, I started a Smash team pretty much from scratch. We got a room for practices, which was just 5 or 6 of us showing up once a week. And then eventually after that, we got a classroom and set up weekly tournaments. And that became Emerson Fight Club. It became one of the biggest tournaments in Boston, actually. It's usually the biggest free tournament every week.
Every week?
So there's Balance Patch, which is the big paid bracket every week on Thursdays. And then a bunch of colleges have their own free weekly brackets. And Emerson's actually become the biggest one most of the time.
How many people show up?
We've had as many as 40.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Mid-40s.
Yeah.
On a consistent basis, probably 30 to 35.
That's a good turnout for any tournament.
So
really.
Yeah, your balance patch is probably over around 80 or 90 a lot of the time, but Emerson's become pretty much the second biggest event behind that. And our first one, I think we had 10 people. Nice. So it's in just a couple of years, it's grown quite a bit.
So are you still supporting that now?
Yeah, I actually still go to Fight Club. I don't run it because I don't go to the school anymore. Mm-hmm. But I still go to it every Friday, pretty much whenever I can. And yeah, it's a big scene. I'm really glad we were able to make Emerson sort of a part of the scene. Mm-hmm. And it's sticking around still.
So, that's where you ended your collegiate career at. How did you get into gaming, like rewinding all the way back? Like, what was that first game?
All right.
What was that first game? What was that
first
thing
games
that
I ever
turned it
got when I was like 4? I got a Game Boy Advance, Mario Kart GBA, Mario Kart Super Circuit, Super Mario World Advance 2, and the Game Boy Color Mario Tennis.
Nice.
I loved them. They were amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Still some of my favorite games. And those are all so good. And sort of the big highlights were, I was 7, I got Pokemon for the first time. I think it was Sapphire was my first one, and I still love Pokemon games.
Yep.
Emerald came out when I was probably 9. That's still my favorite one.
Okay.
And I've always loved video games. It's always been a big part of my life. I wasn't really a competitive video game player as a kid.
Right.
And I played sports games with my friends, and it got competitive, but I was never, entering tournaments or involved in esports in any way.
Couch competitive.
Exactly, yeah. And, eventually over the years I discovered Zelda and Fire Emblem, and those became my favorite games across the board. And I always loved Smash Bros., but I always played casually with friends. I got to college, got super into Smash, and started going to tournaments. I was bad for a while. I was not very good for the first couple of years. But now it's been over 4 years. I haven't been officially ranked in the state, but I've been ranked high in the college team when I was in college. One of the best Smash 4 Zelda players, which is big fish in a small pond. And same in Ultimate with Olimar and Corrin. Olimar's a good character, but no one plays him. Corrin, I'm the only one who thinks she's a good character. So, I've gone from very much casual gamer, all through when I was a kid up through high school, and as soon as I got to college, really got more interested in the competitive side, and now I play Smash, all versions of it, mostly Ultimate and Brawl. I play Skullgirls. I play League of Legends to a degree, not a very good degree, but enough that I can commentate it, and that is the goal. Because I'm also a sportscaster, so esports broadcasting is also something I'm interested in. So yeah, I play League. I play a lot of other fighting games when I can, that kind of stuff.
How about Tekken?
I haven't really put much time into that one.
Oh man,
it looks really cool, and I've played it a couple of times, and it seems interesting, but I don't have it. I haven't really played a lot of it. So other than Smash, I play a lot of Skullgirls, a lot of old Street Fighters.
Okay.
SF2 and Third Strike are my favorites. I've played 5 a little, not the same, but it's cool.
Yeah.
I've been learning Under Night, it's a wild game. Uniclear or Unist or whatever they're abbreviating it as now. They like long titles.
Yeah.
But Uniclear has been my latest project. Came out on Switch recently, so I've been playing that.
Okay.
And yeah, I love fighting games especially, but I've been trying to get involved in as many different esports as I can. Because in the last 4 years, I've really gone from video games being a fun hobby to well, maybe this is something I can do career-wise. It's something I can tie into what I already do with broadcasting. And it's something that I love to do. It's
a really natural extension of what you've already been doing. It's it's that next phase of development and improving those other skills. Now, with your interest in becoming a broadcaster, what was that first step like for you? Because I know that it's easy to be okay, I've got finally have the setup and I feel like I can do something with quality, but how did you set that bar for yourself of being okay, this is my first cast, and making sure that it was understandable and what you wanted?
Yeah, so it actually started from back in high school. When I was a kid, I was an athlete. I played mostly baseball, a lot of soccer as well, and played all kinds of sports. Those are the two I spent the most time on, probably. And by the time I was 12 or 13, I had already had a lot of elbow injuries and a lot of things go wrong, and thought, I'm probably not going to be a professional baseball player. It's probably not going to happen. So I'm going to play baseball as long as I can, and then I'll try to be a broadcaster. Because I know a lot about baseball. I talk about sports all the time anyway. Why not turn that into a career?
Sure.
And so I mentioned this to the athletic director at my high school at one point when I was a senior, and he was asking what are you doing in college? What's your plan? I was I'm trying to be a broadcaster, and he told me to come to the basketball games. He'd set me up, and we'd start broadcasting basketball. That became a thing at my high school. They'd never done that before. They'd never done broadcasts before. We set up with an iPad and a mic and a mic that plugs into it.
Yeah.
I was my own cameraman. We had it on a little stand to move it around. And to start off, I knew what I was doing. I knew the sport. I knew how broadcasting worked. I was definitely not very good compared to where I am now.
Right.
But it was something that made sense to me. And it was from the beginning, it was something that was okay, this is something I can do. My mind's always good for keeping track of stats. I always keep track of things as I go along in a game, and I don't have trouble I don't have to write everything down and all that. Yeah. Everything's there. So I did basketball and softball at my high school, and I came here to Emerson to do broadcasting, sportscasting, and right away just got involved. Started calling soccer first, and then onto volleyball and all the other sports here. And it was just like it was a pretty natural thing for me.
Okay.
And it's a skill that like you have to develop over time, but at the same time, it's something that I think for a lot of people and who do it, but certainly for me, it was something that just made sense to me.
Right.
It was, and then I started once I was going to Smash tournaments, and I saw that you could just jump on and commentate. I was like, great, I'll get involved in this for video games too.
That's just easy. Like the
Yeah,
opportunity's
exactly.
right in front of you, and you just took advantage of it.
I'd been commentating sports, traditional sports, for a year or two by this point, and was just like, hey, this is something I could do. It would be fun.
Now, with the popularity of your events out here, it sounds like the collegiate fighting game space out here is quite a bit more healthy than from what I'm used to hearing about. Like out in Seattle, like downtown Seattle proper has like 3 or 4 schools that are close enough together, but most of them have only casual gaming groups, so they're not running events or anything like that.
Yeah, we've got a lot.
But the hardcore competitive players, they're like 6 hours removed from Seattle or 4 hours removed from Seattle. And so if anyone wants to be a competitive fighting game player in college, they have to travel.
Right.
And so, I mean, even Seattle, like they have a heart of a fighting game community, but it's still really small, really tight, and like Tekken is actually their game of choice for the most part. So there's a lot of travel involved. How would you judge the overall health of the fighting game scene in colleges out here?
It's so good that we keep Brawl alive. Like it's amazing. Boston's such a great college town. There's so many colleges in the area that there's events. I mentioned Emerson wasn't the only one, but there's COF colleges of the Fenway, which is at Wentworth. There's BU events. There's Northeastern events. There's Suffolk events. Like so many different schools have their own events. Then you leave the immediate Boston area. Lowell has great ones at UMass Lowell. I just met some guys at CEX yesterday from Dean College. I'd heard of it, but I didn't know anything about it. Apparently, they have locals.
Nice.
Like they have weeklies as well, and like there's so many little scenes that all come together. And you leave, you go farther away, you find Stonehill's got a big scene, UConn's got a big scene, and you've got all these places all over New England. And so before I got here, that was kind of already in place. At least COF and BU were pretty big and pretty well established.
Right.
And a lot of those had melee clubs, and then they'd had Brawl through the Brawl days, and then Smash 4 once Smash 4 started.
Yep.
And so my junior year of college, which I guess fall 2017, we started, or fall, 2017, that sounds right. We started this thing called Shadow Series, which was a collegiate series that any college in New England could enter. It was 8 events spread across New England. We had some all the way down in like southern part of Connecticut, all the way out to Amherst, and then a few in the Boston area, just all over the place. And we had people enter from everywhere from like UMA to colleges like UConn, URI, a lot of the ones in the Boston area, UMass Lowell, etc. And we had 8 events with doubles, singles, and crew battles at each one, and like a scoring system to put everything together and figure out who won. And this was a few years ago. CSL for Smash was a bit of a failure its first year, and this was before they really came back and got everything together. So we thought, well, we would love to have this. We don't want it to just be one big tournament one day like CSL is. We want to have a whole series.
Yeah.
And the idea came from me and my friend Seth at UMass Lowell and our friend Brendan out at UMass Amherst. We talked over Facebook for like 3 months, got everyone else involved from schools in the area, and just made it happen. And only one event was at like an esports venue. The rest of them, the other 7, were all at colleges. And not colleges with esports arenas or anything. Just we'd book an event space and just go.
Yeah.
So we hosted one here at Emerson, over in the Bordy Theater. It was, a relatively small event. It was 30-something people, and I think 5 crews. But we had as many as the Lowell one had 64 entrants for singles, big doubles bracket, and I think 7 or 8 crews, and like a lot of them were on that kind of scale.
Yeah.
And so it became this massive thing where we had colleges from all over the place. I think UMA, ended up winning. They had, 3 of the top 10 in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Or 3 of the top 15. It was top 15 at that point.
Okay.
3 of the top 15 in Massachusetts went to UMA. And then they had, one more who was New York, almost New York PR, New York Power Ranking, and he went to UMA. And then they had like a couple other people who were still really good, so they were pretty much untouchable. But UML, Harvard, BU all like put up a fight, had some good teams. We kind of had just me back then, but after the couple of years after that, by the end of my time at Emerson, my like senior year, we had a really strong team.
Okay.
And we won a couple of events, a couple crew battle events. We won like a couple of things. We got second at the CSL qualifier my last semester, which was like out of I think 16 or 17 crews. Like it was a huge bracket.
That's a big.
So
that's big.
We lost out to UML. They're insane. They're like a lot of their best players graduated when I did last year, but UMass Lowell was terrifying at that point, and they had I don't think they had anyone who was on PR at that point, but they had 3 or 4 people who were like just off of it.
Yeah.
And we had 2 who were at that level, me and one other person. So it was rough, but it was, a lot of really good talent showing up. And some schools brought multiple crews. Like we had such a huge scene. So it was a very long-winded answer, I guess, but there's like the college scene here is amazing.
Yeah.
There's so many schools all with their own scenes, and then when we bring them together, they become like incredibly powerful. And it's Smash Bros at most is probably the most popular one, but at Fight Club specifically, we run other fighting games all the time. We have like a rotating thing where we'll run one 2D fighter every week, and it can be Street Fighter, it can be Skullgirls, it can be Uniclear, it can be whatever people are interested in that week.
That whole story just kind of wraps up a few of my favorite parts of gaming culture. Like
absolutely,
the FGC, like they will take whatever space they have. They will bring every single setup. They will pile like 7 CRTVs into the back of their parents' van.
Absolutely,
and just be like, "We're doing this. It's happening."
It's how Melee has stayed alive. It's how we keep Brawl alive around here. We're a dedicated group. The FGC always starts from very little. Street Fighter has a lot of developer support, and some other games do too. Like Skullgirls does as well, but it's a smaller game, smaller developers, all that. And you have other games with some sort of developer support, but for the most part, developers aren't going to sponsor tournaments every week.
Right.
They're going to sponsor big events. They're not going to run tournaments all over the country. They can't do that. It's just not possible. So everything's got to come from the ground up, and we can't compete on Wi-Fi regularly.
No.
Like it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, like
if there's 3 frames of input lag on, let's say, League of Legends, I don't even feel it.
Yeah.
Like I'm not a top player in League of Legends by any means, but I don't think it really makes any difference until you get to a very, very top level.
Yeah. And I mean, like inputs on fighting games are the make or break between like. That's the critically analyzed moments of a matchup. Is like someone messed up their inputs. You drop like in Tekken, you drop a combo
it's half decision making and half physical execution. And some of the games are even harder to execute than others.
Yeah.
In Smash, or Street Fighter stuff, like you'll have some combos that are a 1-frame window. I played Smash for Zelda. She was very reliant on a grab confirm, a kill confirm off a grab that had a 1 to 2 frame window depending on the character. If there's 2 or 3 frames of input lag and it's varying from Wi-Fi, she's unplayable.
Right.
And she's already a bad character, but don't worry about that. But she becomes unplayable.
Right.
And there's plenty of characters like that. There's plenty of characters that get better because they're less precise.
Yep.
And no one enjoys that.
Yeah.
But also a lot of those characters, people who are really good are going to be used to playing them offline, and they're not going to be able to play them right online, the right way for online. So we have to be an offline scene.
Yep.
We don't have the kind of net play that exists on MOBAs or things like that. And it creates this community where everyone's got to be, in one place to make anything happen. And it's especially great, I think, for colleges.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest struggles the fighting game community has had overall is that everything was that arcade-centric lifestyle. Like, you have to be next to each other, one, because of all the inputs and how it affects gameplay, but also because that's how that culture started. Like it was you fight the person standing right next to you.
Yeah.
And it was a matter of reputation and like understanding the like your neighborhood and like being able to be top dog in that situation. Like that meant something because people were putting a face to the character and the style and who was on that leaderboard basically. And when you have that camaraderie paired with the college esports space where everyone just wants each other to succeed, you strip away some of the other insecurities of the fighting game community of being territorial over event scheduling and over like what games are being played when and what game is getting the priority. It's just you're all there for that reason of improving each other in the fighting game space, because like there's
improving the space itself. We all want to see better events. We all want to see more events and all that.
And outside of the CSL, I'm not aware of any attempts for creating a collegiate fighting game space.
Not much.
And so then everyone is reliant on those locals and those weeklies to get them ready for things like Evo, ready for like DreamHack level events.
And people have their paid brackets at esports venues wherever, and for us in Boston, that's Balance Patch now. Balance Patch only opened like 2 years ago. Before that, it was Smash on the Hill, which was at the church on the hill. We were in the back room of a church next to the State House. That was where my first tournaments were. That was the space we had in Boston. So we all showed up. It was definitely a fire hazard. It was like back room of a church with power strips daisy chained across the floor. And there was no space at the monthlies. Weeklies weren't as crowded, probably 40 or 50 people. Monthlies had easily 100, sometimes more. We had up to 150, 200 people show up for those kind of things. The room probably would have been, crowded by the time there was 100. And so, that was the space we had, so we went with it. And back then, there was really just COF, Wentworth, and BU a little bit, but it wasn't very big yet. And then there was Smash on the Hill, and that was pretty much the only scene there was in Boston. And then, of course, we started to grow it to more and more places, more and more colleges. And the way that works is pretty much that, I was at Emerson. I saw these events at other schools, wanted to make one at my school. We got new people here from, let's say, from Suffolk. One of my friends who started the Suffolk Weekly, he didn't really know much about the Smash scene here, but he heard there was one at Emerson, which was right next door, saw it, and was like, oh, I'm going to do this at my school. And so now we've got a college weekly 5 or 6 days of the week in Boston.
That's incredible.
It's amazing. You can go somewhere almost every day. I think other than Wednesdays, there's something going on every day in the Boston area. And if you have a car, you can always get to something. But just within the Boston area, there's a tournament you can go to 5 or 6 days a week.
I'm jealous.
It's amazing. We love it.
And this is turning out I'm just not familiar with a lot of the college landscapes outside of where I went to school. And so to hear that there are so many schools around here and how Boston is a college town, that setup is so envious, and
it works out so well. And but it really wasn't like this, when I got here in 2015. It was and Smash 4 was not as popular as Ultimate has become, but this was all set up by the end of Smash 4. We had all this for a game that was, dying according to a lot of people. And for that matter, we have Brawl at most of the college weeklies. That game most people think has been dead for years. We still have a Brawl scene here. And it's we have so many people who are passionate about what we do that our Brawl brackets get probably I think our record is 18 entrants, usually 10 to 12. But for a game where in most places people are just like, oh, no one plays that game. And we get events where we have 16 people entering an Ultimate bracket and more than half of them enter Brawl. And we're just we're doing everything we can to keep it going. Because there's people who love it and people who care about it.
I mean, that's one of the big questions, even in professional esports, is what games are going to be around 5, 10, 15 years from now? And I think you can look at League of Legends and be like, okay, this one's going to be...
That looks like it's pretty set.
Yeah, it's pretty set. I mean, Counter-Strike is absolutely set. It's been around since the early 2000s, basically. So
those aren't going anywhere.
But
fighting games are just so constantly changing. You can always be sure Street Fighter will be there, but you don't know which one. You don't know how different it's going to be from one to the next. I mean, as I said, I play SF2 and Third Strike mostly. Street Fighter V runs on the same fundamentals to a degree, but the game's entirely different.
And it received very different support from the developers as opposed to 4.
And also it's, I think people criticized Street Fighter V a lot when it came out, and rightfully so, and they did a lot to make it better. And it's now gotten to the point where, especially as a spectator experience, it's amazing. Okay. And they fixed a lot of the problems that people had with the gameplay as well. Still has a lot of input lag. But that's actually, in Skullgirls, one of the characters has a move that, like, if you hit it, puts input lag in the opponent's moves for a bit. And we call it Street Fighter V mode.
Oh.
So
savage.
But so yeah, that is still an issue. But across the board, that game's gotten so much better, and it's a great like spectator experience and a fun game to play.
Yeah.
But that's the one that gets the most developer support. You see Capcom Cup, you see all that kind of events. Nintendo like associates themselves with some big Smash tournaments, but there's no money.
Yeah.
There's no money coming from them. There's no and they still have like 2 of their games that are wildly popular from that series alone. Yep. Like both Ultimate and Melee have massive numbers, and there's no money.
And they just announced that they're going to do some sort of support for the Smash community. So I mean, it's 15 years late, but like better late than never.
Melee is almost as old as I am. Like, Melee came out in 2001. Like that game's been around a long time, and it's still alive.
Yep.
And not just alive, like hanging on the way like small brawl scenes are, but everywhere, almost as popular as Ultimate. It's not getting the influx of new players that Ultimate is, but the scene is still there, and there are still new people going to it, especially new players who learned Ultimate and went, "Oh, Melee looks cool. I'm gonna check that out."
And with the way Ultimate is setting up to be, like it's drawn record numbers. It was a very well selling title.
And they've already got so much more DLC planned that it's clearly going to be around for a while.
And so, it's cementing itself as at least a title that will be around for a couple years, knowing Nintendo's development time. Like, it'll be a little while until we see the next iteration of Smash.
Right, because it would, you'd assume it would be on the new console.
Yep.
Like they've never done 2 on the same console before.
Yeah.
The Switch doesn't look like it's going anywhere. The Switch is amazing.
So this might be a title that has that longevity over.
Right.
Is an IP that has
that's
longevity.
What we're hoping for.
Yeah, exactly. But it's still cementing Smash as a game, as an esport that will be around for a long time.
Yeah, Smash in some form.
Yeah.
It's always going to be. And there's always going to be people who play all of them is the thing. There's still small pockets of people who play 64, Brawl, and Smash 4 in various places.
I think it would be amazing to see like a Smash All-Stars type tournament where like one round is one game. And
at Super Smash Con every year, there's a tournament called Smash Masters. And they take 8 of the top players who play multiple games in the series, and they do a bracket like that.
Nice.
Where you play a best of 5 of best of 3 sets, like one in each game.
Oh wow!
And you counterpick the game, like so you strike to a game. You start, let's say, on Melee, and then the loser of the Melee set chooses the next game. So they can be like, all right, now we're going to Smash 4, and you play a best of 3 in that. Loser picks, all right, now we're gonna play Ultimate, like. And it's so much fun. It's one of the most amazing events to watch every year because you get to see these guys who, one of them will be a top Melee player, one of them will be a top Ultimate player, and they both like sort of played Brawl in 64, and then you get to see what it's like when they have to adapt to those games. And a lot of them are really good at some of the other games that you don't think they'd be good at.
Yeah.
And some of them are just kind of okay at it. There's certain Smash fundamentals that carry over and certain things you have to know about each game to play them.
Got it.
So it's always fun to watch, especially because very few people really play 64. The 64 community is very separate from the rest of the Smash community a lot of the time, whereas most Smash 4 players and Melee players tried out the other games while Smash 4 was big, and then Ultimate a little less so, but still there's a lot of crossover.
Yeah.
But most of the time, 64 players are 64 players.
Okay.
And so watching top Smash players from other games play each other in 64 and be like, whoa, what's this? It's always a good time.
Yeah. So, I mean, that is a huge part of who you are and what you've been playing and what you're hoping to do. How does that tie into your role with CEX and just wanting to help out the Emerson Esports Club?
Yeah, so I was with CEX when we started. I was in Kevin's esports class when this all started, and it started as a class project. I mean, CEX was Kevin came into class one day and was like, "Guys, what if we did this? And we were all like, yeah, it sounds good. What can we do? And we made it happen. It was small the first year, but it was successful.
Yeah.
And people enjoyed it, and it got more people interested in it.
Okay.
Last year was bigger, still in the same venue, in the Semel Theater here at Emerson. Actually, like, just over there and a couple floors down. We're pretty close to it. But it was a pretty big event. It started to fill up the theater a bit more, but we had video, and we had, it was a much more official kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so my job, I helped setting it up a lot, like the pre-planning phase, but I also hosted it, which is, right up my alley of things that I do.
Casting, like
sports
it's
casting,
right there.
Esports casting. So we got to the day of, and it wasn't even planned that far in advance. It was kind of like, Kevin was like, oh, we need a host. I'm like, I can do it.
Yeah.
And so we just did. We just did it like that. And I was on one of the panels as well, but mostly I was the host in between everything. Mm-hmm. And this year, I'm not at Emerson anymore, so I wasn't working as closely with him on the pre-CEX phase. But I contacted him, a while before and said, hey, I'd love to help out again. He's like, yeah, like come host some panels, help out around the thing. And yeah, I showed up. I ended up hosting, I think, 4 of the panels, 2 as like a moderator, 2 as just introducing people. And then also did some interviews and helped people out behind the scenes, running things, all that. And it was great. The event was spectacular this year. It was incredible, the growth from last year to this year.
Right.
And the planned growth for next year. Kevin's got all kinds of people interested next year, even more so than what it is now.
Oh, I can only imagine what he's already thinking next year and the next 2 years.
It's going to be big. It's going to be really big. But, the venue was great. The Park Plaza was such a nice place for it. We went from one decent-sized theater to, 4 rooms that were all, close to the size of the theater.
Yeah.
All going at once. And the hallway with various people having tables out there as well. Some of the sponsors and all that. And it was spectacular. To walk in and see all of that in the morning was just like, wow, this is going to be big.
And
and it lived up to it. It was fantastic.
And every show has its kerfuffles that happen along the way, and it's you'll learn and you'll get used to it for next year. And there's just some things that are outside of your control. Like they ordered badges and lanyards for those badges, and then the lanyards showed up empty. You can't help that. That's not on you for dealing with it.
And they made it work. Yeah. They were name tags.
Someone made stickers.
Someone brought in a bunch of stickers for people to make their own if they weren't in the group that were there. And it was the kind of thing. It was like, okay, well, this sucks. Let's work through it.
Yep, exactly.
And we did, and it didn't cause any big issues. I'm most amazed that everything ran on time.
Yeah,
that was shocking.
Yeah, and
that was pretty amazing.
I know my panel had to be rescheduled to a later time, but. And it was put in a spot where there wasn't a 5 or 10 minute break in between everything else, so it was just ready, set, go. But then at the same time, everyone was very understanding of that. So my panel started 5 minutes late, but it ended on time anyways. Right. And so it worked out for me timing wise. I didn't have the time for a Q&A section, but the main point of that panel was just to share what I was talking about.
Get the information out,
and everything moved quickly. Most meetings that I'm a part of professionally with my career, you set an hour-long meeting and it's trickling into the next hour, and the next meeting's late, starts late, or people are late getting to another meeting. It's on and on. It cascades throughout the entire day, and it's kind of a crappy situation. Yeah. But everyone knew where they needed to be. Everyone knew what they had to do, and these are all students, 20, 30 students who are helping to run this thing. But there was a plan for it. There's pre-production planning behind it, and then they still executed. Everything that was on the students.
Almost everyone, aside from Kevin, was students. There were 2 or 3 other people who Kevin called in from other places, and other than that, it was Ethan and Paige running the show for a lot of it, and they're both Emerson students, and everyone else involved was either there right now or. Me, coming back from being there the last couple of years.
And what an opportunity for alumni to keep coming back
Absolutely.
And giving back. Or
I saw 2 other people from my class who were, who graduated and are just still in Boston or happen to be in Boston. And I was like, well, we still know Kevin because he's a good person to know.
And Rick from Northeastern, he's moving on shortly or in the next few months, and he'll be moving on. But he's already talking about how he wants to come back and help again. It's like,
and that's someone else who's going to be in another place who can spread the word. Like, hey, this is a big thing.
And no matter what industry everyone graduates and moves into, they're going to make connections and just be like, oh, I'm going back to Boston for this event. Hey, maybe you should tag along. Maybe this will
help whatever you're doing. Because there's so many different things and different like genres of careers that are involved in esports.
Yep.
And it's something that everyone can benefit from. I mean, one of the big sponsors was Ameriprise. Like,
yeah.
I went up and talked to some people. Was like, hey, what are you guys here for? Like, we're from Ameriprise Financial. I'm like, what? It's like they were there because they figured that the esports crowd was someone who should talk to them, and therefore they wanted to go and be a part of it, of the scene. And I was like, wow, this would never have thought that, but sure.
I mean, think about that.
We all need help with money.
In the third year of its existence, you're already getting like non-endemic interest.
Yeah.
And so especially when you have someone like Kevin at the helm who has connections and like with everyone apparently.
We don't even know how, just everyone.
And like from the music industry to professional esports to all of his other investment and consultation connections, like he's going to be able to bring so many more people in.
Right. Yeah.
But his network stops somewhere. But the extension of those,
people who he gets involved
brings them even more relevancy and wider nets.
So the event just has to be good enough that everyone wants to come back and wants to tell people about it, and it looks like it was. I think it was extremely successful this year.
Honestly, I don't know why GDC doesn't happen out here. Like San Francisco is nice and all, but like that space, it felt small. It felt convoluted and like even kind of organizationally it was kind of a mess like 2 years ago when I went. Granted, most of the venue was under construction on the outside, that made it a whole hell of a lot more different and difficult. But like colleges being all out here, like so many college students end up volunteering for shows like PAX as enforcers or at GDC just trying to get connections and networking. Like between CEX and if you were to bring out the game development community out here,
of course.
Like that's a huge pairing that has possibility. And I know there's been murmurs about GDC not being in San Francisco, and I know this year's kind of complicated with the whole coronavirus and all that stuff. But like
plan things,
but I mean, getting from
so much of the esports convention and otherwise scene happens in LA or the LA area. Which is, it's great because there's a lot of brands out there and a lot of people out there and a lot of schools who are heavily involved in esports. But there's such a huge scene on the East Coast as well. And Boston and New York especially have large scenes for a lot of games. Boston is such a big college town, as we've been talking about, that there's always going to be people interested in esports showing up here for the first time. And you've got an opportunity with so many people interested in different aspects of the community. And it's a really great place for it, I think.
Yeah, and moving onward with Emerson and your role, like you want to be doing like broadcasting and shoutcasting and just trying to move forward with that.
And I've met people through Kevin and through these kind of events at Celtics Gaming, at Microsoft. I've broadcast League of Legends tournaments at the Microsoft store here in Boston and at Balance Patch that were associated with Microsoft and a couple other people. I've gotten to know the guys from the Celtics Gaming team, and that's their 2K League team. I've done a couple of events with them. I got another one coming up in a couple weeks. We're going to be at the planetarium. They're going to show it on the ceiling.
And I mean, all of this just
all came from like being part of the Emerson collegiate esports scene.
And it's just a natural extension of what you were trying to do before you knew what you wanted to do.
And I've had people ask me like if I'd prefer to do like traditional sports or esports. I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Whoever wants to pay me to talk about something I love, I'm here. That's what I do. And it's great to do to be able to do all of the above. And I've had opportunities. I work at UMass Boston doing sports, all of their sports teams play-by-play, and I've done all kinds of freelance esports work around Boston as well. And it's great, to be able to combine all that, do all that stuff at once.
And like from your perspective, it's the shoutcasting and broadcasting for like either TV or radio, whatever methods you've been doing it for. But like that could easily apply to someone who is an analyst.
Exactly.
And, like they could have been like a sports analyst, like someone who kept the books for their local high school team, baseball team. Yeah. And it's just keeping the books, keeping track. Okay, this pitcher's throwing a first pitch curveball the last 3 batters. You might want to pay attention to that. We've seen
the same kind of analytical mind that you need for a League of Legends team.
Exactly.
Like that.
And I mean,
a lot of the skills transfer over, and I that was something I was always surprised about as a player. You know, growing up playing baseball a lot, playing soccer, playing tennis, like tennis especially, so similar to fighting games in the mental aspect of it. There's like, you know, you're obviously doing something very physically different. But the mental game of tennis, and there's a book that's recommended very highly by a lot of people, the Inner Game of Tennis, that applies so much to fighting games.
Oh, interesting.
And it's an extremely similar mindset when you're playing the game. You're playing, you know, 1-on-1 or occasionally 2-on-2. There's never any more than that, but mostly it's an individual competition. And you have the same kind of game states where you've got sort of neutral interactions where neither one really has an advantage, and you're both looking to push for an advantage without giving up anything. And then you've got situations where someone's at an advantage and the person who's at the disadvantage is trying to stay alive in the point in tennis, or, you know, get out of the corner in a fighting game. Those are really similar situations in terms of competition.
I can see that.
And it was funny to me, especially, I think it's even more clear in 2D fighters in a game like Street Fighter or something like that, to compare these exact situations. You know, someone in tennis controlling the point from the center of the court while the other person's having to run back and forth, but they're staying alive in the point. Versus in Street Fighter, someone, you know, blocking in the corner, being in a bad position and looking for an opportunity to reverse it, but for that moment they're just trying to keep blocking and keep staying alive, looking for that opportunity to get out of the bad situation.
Right. So like the whole idea of analysts and casters, and even you could do graphic design, any of that.
Like so
no matter how you started it, where you take it is entirely up to you. How can you capitalize on that? Any changes in the environment, like Kevin and I talked on the last episode about being prepared for disruption, being prepared for it, and knowing how you can adapt with what skills you have. And I mean, you and I both actually share the background of having played baseball for a good long while. And so being able to, like for me, I think I took more of the mental game out of that and was able
so much mental game.
Like it's a slow plotting type of game. Pitcher, first baseman for me, and it's like every role has that critical place to be at when the ball's coming towards them in the play, right? And being able to take that into professional life, into any of the other competitive aspects of like being able to stay positive and mentally into it.
It applies to competing. It applies to running tournaments. It applies to broadcasting. So many aspects of esports. It's all kind of the same ideas. And like being a competitor is, you know, completely different from being a tournament organizer or a broadcaster or anything, or, you know, an analyst or whatever. But there's so much overlap between sort of the way that you think, and from traditional sports to esports as well. It's all kind of the same idea a lot of the time. But yeah, I think that's always something really interesting, is how often those skills actually apply to multiple places of esports, not just competing, but running events, putting things together, all that.
Now, if you had an opportunity to say, this is how we're going to further, you know, either the FGC in the area or Emerson Esports, and just be like, okay, this is that next evolution that's going to make Emerson really stand out, or make the New England area FGC really just be like, this is the scene that you want to play in, and not like the SoCal, North Cal scene. What would that be? What's your wish list item?
So I think the New England scene is really good. The New England scene altogether. The Emerson scene has a lot of things going in the right direction, but there's not enough resources. And there was a Twitch streaming class that was experimented with, and they didn't offer the teacher like a position to come back. It was going well, people were enjoying it, but they didn't want to commit to it. They didn't want to commit to esports being that much of a presence here, even though a lot of the administration, and especially a lot of the sports comm department, really supports esports being a part of this. They've often not gone about it in ways that really helped us very much.
Got it.
So on the one hand, Emerson Esports as an organization has done a lot of work with film, because we have a lot of VMA people, visual media arts people. So we have a lot of people who have gone and done film, like done VMA work at, DreamHacks and various conventions and kind of places like that. But we also have, not only a lot of competitors, but a lot of people interested in so many aspects. You've got people on, the marketing side,
Yep.
or people on the promotion and tournament organization, so many things. And Emerson doesn't really, we run Fight Club in a classroom.
Mm-hmm.
We run it in 3 classrooms. We can only reserve one of them. If one of them is taken, we pick a different one.
Yep.
And it's, we reserved that room back when it was, a 10-person event. We got, up to 12 people each week playing one game. Now we have up to 40 people playing up to 5 games.
In one classroom.
In 3 classrooms.
Okay, no.
There's 2 that can only be reserved for rehearsal space.
I see.
No one's ever rehearsing anything at 9 p.m. on a Friday, so we always have it. But it's not even technically ours.
And I mean, you never know how long you get to keep that resource.
Exactly, but that's the space that we have available.
Mm-hmm.
There's no dedicated esports space anywhere on campus.
Yeah.
And I know that some people here, I don't know the details yet because I'm not a part of it since I graduated, but
right.
I know there's some people trying to fight for having some sort of dedicated space for Emerson Esports as a club. Because right now, some of the computer-based games use the computer lab, and you can bring a laptop in, or you can play on some of the computers there. There's a couple of different rooms that get rented out or booked for various points in time for competition, but there's no dedicated esports space on campus anywhere. And that, I think, is the next step for Emerson specifically.
Gotcha.
To compete more with a lot of the bigger schools where, we're not a physically very large school.
Right.
Not a huge number of people, not a huge area. But there's enough space that they could have, one dedicated room somewhere.
And I mean, your production capabilities are obviously
they're incredible.
Obviously incredible.
But we run into so many issues with technology still.
Yeah.
There's we've got these beautiful theaters that run on VGA sometimes rather than HDMI. And so we show up with these, with these consoles, and Emerson has the adapters for them, but it makes it pretty hard. We've run Smash Bros events in the Bordy Theater multiple times. And to put the projection up, we have so many adapters and everything we have to do to get it to look okay. The stream looks good. We broadcast online, it looks fine.
Yeah.
But for people in person, it's that screen looks weird.
Yeah.
And it's because the space isn't built for esports. The space is built for presentations. It's built for people to put their PowerPoint up on the screen.
It's built for the classes for the last 20 years.
Exactly. And it's it's the latest technology of 1992 sometimes, and it's it's been updated maybe once since then. And it's the room does its intended purpose, but its intended purpose is not esports.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's an issue of just upgrading to modern technology, because that honestly wouldn't really change much. Everything's functional right now.
You still need the personnel support behind it and the encouragement and acknowledgement to say...
there has to be more something more dedicated to esports rather than the ability for us to run an event in a space once in a while.
And I think with the production qualities that you have here, if you could run any sort of connection to wherever that room may be, and then run your LAN events, run any sort of big fighting game tournaments there, you can
There's so much opportunity that the school is almost there.
If the school would then basically, you would be saying that the school could be prioritizing the content creation just like all the other broadcasting going
Absolutely.
on. It's serving the same purpose that the school is known for.
We have multiple studios for journalism, for newscasting, all that kind of stuff, and we have more than enough equipment to support more places, more locations for that. And it doesn't have to be the same technology that's in our best TV studio. It has to be technology where in a lot of esports things we bring our own stuff. We bring our own computers, or we bring our own consoles, or whatever. So the space and basic equipment would really be the priority, even if it does, even if Emerson doesn't want to commit the money or the space to a full out esports arena. We don't really have room for that. We're in downtown Boston.
And I mean, the way that the community, just like what you were saying at the beginning, the players aren't necessarily here for a big payout. They just want to play.
Yeah, a lot of our players are competing at paid events all the time. They also all show up to Fight Club, which is $0. The winner wins $0. You pay $0, and that's all the college weeklies in the area. There's one paid weekly in Boston. There's another one in Waltham nearby. Other than that, you can't really get to any without a car. Which most college students here don't have.
Yeah.
I didn't. I never had a car in college. And like most of our players are competing at paid events as well, but they're all showing up to all these free events as well. People are here to get better, to expand the scene, to make improvements, whether to themselves, their tournaments, etc. And they're all getting as much experience as they can. And so having more space to put things together and get people used to what it would be like to run a bigger event, run bigger, more important looking events, because that's very important, in this business.
Using the same skills that you used to build CX.
Exactly, yeah. And then, CEX looked spectacular.
Oh, yeah.
It looked so much better. And last year it looked fine. It was in the Semmel Theater. It did its job. And this year it was this massive, almost convention center kind of feel with so many different places going on and such a beautiful, location between it, that it was clearly a step up.
Yeah.
And Emerson has the ability to have that kind of thing on campus. It doesn't have to look like the Park Plaza Hotel. Yeah. But it can look like a college venue. Yeah. But there's very nice ones.
And, you already get a lot of those types of events with your freshman welcoming events. So it's like, if you even set up something very similar to that and then supported it with production value around it just to create extended content around it, like, you're already building off of something that you're doing.
We run events in multiple theaters here, like multiple different theaters within this, like, just the 8 buildings we have on campus. Yeah. We've had crew battles projected on stage at the Paramount Theater, and we've had multiple events in the Bordy Theater. We had the conference in the Semmel Theater. Like, we have so many places that we've made it work, but none of them that are dedicated to this. Yeah. And they could be a lot smaller and still do their job.
Right. All right. Well, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you want to say, either about your own personal projects or where you see yourself going over the next few years, or just about CEX or Emerson Esports?
I think we've covered pretty much all of it.
Yeah.
Esports has been such a big part of my life. I'm so glad to get to talk about it here and make things happen at CEX and put all that together. It's just so exciting. People from all different places. Like, seeing people from so many different backgrounds and places come together for this kind of thing, and so many people are so passionate about it.
Absolutely.
And that's what I love is the passion that everyone in the community displays for whatever their game is, whatever their job is. People love playing whatever their game is, love doing whatever their job might be, whether it's content creation.
Right.
I was talking about infrastructure on one of the panels yesterday, people building gaming and LAN centers. There's so much important stuff to do, and people are so excited to do all of it. And it's such a rapidly growing industry that that passion isn't going away anytime soon.
Right.
So everyone loves it, and I'm just happy to be a part of that.
So what do you have coming up, and how can people stay in touch or reach out to you? Because if you're doing all these events and shoutcasting, how can they keep in touch or get in contact with you?
I'm on Twitter at PurpleHaze37, Hayes, spelled like my last name. So yeah, you can follow me there. I talk about Smash a lot. That's most of it. But I post whenever I'm on commentary for Smash or for traditional sports and etc. But any big esports event I'm doing, I'll mention it on there. People can add me on Discord if they want. Zyvon, ZYVON. The number is 8174, and I'll respond to messages there. As long as I'm talking, everyone go play Skullgirls. It's $1 right now. It's the best fighting game ever.
Done. All right. Well, thanks for joining me and helping me record another episode of my marathon recording day.
Absolutely. Glad to be a part of it.
All right. Thanks.
Summoning. Part 2. Summoning Hour Podcast. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the podcast.